So I'm yes, I'm a biology. I like to think of myself as a biology uh, professor with an environmental. My degree's in environmental science. So I'm going to share the screen here in just a second. All right. Okay, I'm going to make the assumption that everybody can see my PowerPoint right here. Yes, good. And I too can relate let me get it started here for the I too can relate to screens off and students going dark and trying to adjust to this world that we've all entered into over the course of the past year, year and a half. And and it has been an interesting sort of journey. And I'll make a sort of a comparison to I my family jokes with me about this because I use this with lots of life situations, but I compare it to a river. But I'll hold that nugget for a minute as I get into this. So the title of this is Tricks of the Teaching Trade. And of course, the slide, the image here, just like Scott was mentioned in his talk earlier, images contain powerful messages and certainly videos. I think you can, it's almost like a exponential increase in information that can be portrayed in a video. But I like images. I like to paint a picture. I like to tell stories. And so the first question, I've only got four basic points that I want to bring up. And the first thing is playing to your strength. And I think that is very important. And sometimes it's very hard when we get in the mix of chaos, which I think many of us have entered into in the environment in which we're teaching now. It's not what it's certainly not what I signed up for decades ago when I decided, hey, I'm going to be a college professor. I had no idea that I would be spending a majority of my time in front of a computer at this point, or dealing with the pandemic that we're in the middle of. And so it really has made me over the past year reflect on what's my strength or strengths, and so that's the question to ask is what is your strength, and contemplation with this acts as a catalyst, and I think in some ways I'm certainly not the same professor I was when I started teaching years ago. I've evolved as a teacher, and I think that is true for all of us. But certainly now, I think that we need to take a pause and really evaluate ourselves as to what our strength or strengths may be, because many of us, or many of you, may have several strengths, and I think it's very important for us to capitalize on that. And also, and I do set up in my courses. I mean, we have the normal feedback we get with course evaluations, but I certainly like to set up something in my course that's just in-house, to where I can get feedback on what the students like and what they dislike. And I do find that the once I get my likes, and if I play into those, I tend to I, like Scott, do a lot of videos in my courses. But over time, over years, I've learned to make the videos short, to make sure they capture the audience, and do, all these little tricks. And so use that criticism, the feedback you get from your students, and act on that. And I think it can take you a long way. So this next one, here comes the river story, and I know I have to keep my talk short too, to 20 minutes, which shouldn't be a problem. I think that I'll hit that pretty close. But be flexible. I think being flexible is extremely important. And so and in this, and so here's the river, and I'm going to talk about this river as I pull up some more of these points. Maybe I should just sort of pull up another point there. So my son and I, my son has now turned 18, and there's challenges in that in itself. But we always take a father-son adventure. in during the summer, which I'm trying my best right now to play out my summer vacation as long as I can. I'm sort of pretending like I'm still on summer vacation right now. But we always take a father-son adventure. And this one was from last year, and I live in Tennessee. Of course, I'm a virtual professor there with Texas, but we went to a location of wilderness here nearby called the Big South Fork. And the Big South Fork hosts a river, the Cumberland River, that rips right through a giant gorge in this natural area. And I'm not a kayak. Here's the brunt of the story. I'm not a kayaker, but each year we try to sort of up the ante and do something more challenging. And instead of crossing this mountain 2 or 3 times, we're going to run 18 miles of this river. And we're not kayakers. And I'll keep that in mind. And I am, and I can relate to our students here at Central Texas College quite a bit. I'm ex-military, so I always feel like I'm still a tough guy. But even though I'm 53 now. And so we got on this river. The thing is, I'm river novice. I'm not an expert at this. And I learned, this was a learning experience for me for sure. But it rained a little bit a day or two before. And so we're during our hiking portion. I thought, well, that's a little concerning, but I've checked with the experts. I know the river should be pretty navigable. The water levels were very low. Well, if you can kind of look in the background, that's a swollen river. And we went 18 miles on the swollen river. Hindsight, I would have never entered the river, but we did do it. And the water was flowing. I didn't really understand what 3,000 cubic feet per second really meant until post river adventure. And so once we got on there, we had full packs, all our gear attached to these kayaks. There was no turning back. And so, but I sort of pull this analogy to the classroom. We've entered into this river. We're all on these little boats and we're on this river together. And, whether I'm teaching here in Tennessee or some other places where I teach remotely, there's that's very much an unexpected environment. Are we all going to have to go online? Or our class is going to have to, all the different modalities of teaching. And so with being flexible with this, I think we need to, and this is extremely important, expect the unexpected. And the being flexible also can entail this aspect of being adaptable and certainly pulling on creativity. And with that comes power. And I've really tried to capitalize on knowing and expecting the unexpected now. And I think, and this is one more key point here that's not a little bullet point, but in these moments, that's when the teachable moments occur because students are dealing with the same kind of stuff that we're dealing with. And it's the way we react to situations, and it's the way that we're able to deliver the material. It's the way that we're able to communicate. And so communication is key. And I'm sure you're wondering, why do I have my Cub Cadet that's taken apart here in front of you? So I'm not a mechanic, right? But the way that you can portray an image, the way that you can instruct a student, the way that we understand how students learn today. Because the way I learn is, and the way I replace this belt on this mower is through YouTube videos, a little flash video that's 5 minutes long, and understanding that and capitalizing on those kind of things is paramount. So we have to almost go back to relationships 101 and understanding that the sort of the key to the success in the classroom, whether you're teaching in person or teaching online for the first time, is that communication is key. That you've got to be able to hear the students, and the students certainly have to be able to hear you. And I certainly can relate to the students going dark on you. I had an 8 o'clock freshman biology 1010 class with 40 students in it on a synchronous online Zoom. And I was terrified with that because I'm an in-person kind of teacher. But I found at the end of the semester, I was getting very high reviews from the students and essentially had 100% attendance. And it was some simple tricks like making sure I did a random quiz from time to time, making sure that, if I saw your camera was off, Tracy Martin, I would say, hey, I've got a question for you. There, are you just sleeping? Or and really engage them that way to where I would call students out and still in a friendly kind of way. But relationships 101 is very important. And then that spins right into presence in your course, that you have to have a very powerful uh, in control kind of presence with your course, whether it's in person or whether it's synchronous or whether it's asynchronous, because I will barrage my students with announcements and I let them know at the beginning. And all of us do our courses different, but I post announcements every other, a couple per week, send them messages in the course and stay in touch with them. And of course, back to the teaching modality is the awareness that, are you teaching in person? Well, you may format yourself different if you're teaching in person, obviously, than if you're teaching strictly online. Now, this last one, and I've only spent a minute or two on this, thought was a little funny. When I first crafted this PowerPoint and what I was going to say, I was pretty much just thinking about all my science colleagues. And so I had a little blurb. That's my fourth point: staying current in the field. And for me, and my wife goes, well, what about everybody that's the English or math professor? And I thought, well, yeah, that's just important. You still have to stay current in your field, but it's not quite the same as staying current in your field if you're a geneticist or a biologist. And so it's a little different there. But here's the key point: our field, truly, all of us are in the same boat with this. We're teachers. And so I think you sort of need to keep yourself involved in what you teach. For me, I read Scientific American constantly. I do small research with Tennessee Technological University that's in the same town where I teach full time at a community college here, Ball State. So I stay involved with research, but I also keep I know that I am a master learner myself. And so why do I have a picture of a bunch of succulents there with little pots that looks like I'm fixing to do a transplant? Because this is a challenge to me. And each year I set off running like I'm going to be the succulent master, and I am not yet. And so I'm trying. But do what sets you on fire and share that with your students. And remember that when you're in that class, you are the expert. You are the expert teacher. You are the master of that material. And so with that, I'll wrap it up, and I'll stop sharing my screen if I can figure that out. Yep, there it is. So I'm back and I can see your faces. So if you have any questions of me, you're more than welcome to ask me. There's one more thing I want to say that with communication being the key, and I like to think outside the box in some cases, like lots of us do. But we started with the college that I work for full time here in Tennessee, volunteer state. We started what we call the Breakfast Club. And what we did is basically invite any and all faculty and staff, if they wanted to come, to a regularly scheduled meeting just to share our experiences, because my tricks of the trade are going to be different than your tricks of the trade. And I use Screencast-O-Matic, which is a great tool to capture the screen and post little videos. But another professor may do something completely different, and that worked really well. It was almost like it really turned into a support group for instructors to share information. It wasn't a gripe session or anything like that. And it worked really, really well. And I would highly recommend that, if we wanted to do that here at this college, I think that all of us could capitalize on that and it could help a lot of people. That's it. And thank you for your time and attention.